The notification sound pierced through my morning coffee routine like a blade. Another withdrawal, $300 this time. My hands trembled as I stared at the bank alert on my phone screen, watching my savings hemorrhage drop by drop, day after day, for the past 6 weeks. My husband Derek sat across from me at our kitchen table, scrolling through his own phone with the casual indifference of a man who had nothing to hide. The morning light caught his wedding ring as he lifted his coffee cup. That same ring I had slipped onto his finger 3 years ago, promising to love and trust him through everything. The irony tasted bitter in my mouth. I had tried everything to solve this mystery, changed my passwords twice, called the bank 4 times, even drove to 3 different ATMs, thinking maybe someone had skimmed my card. But the withdrawals kept coming. Small amounts at first, 50 here, 70 there. Then they grew bolder, hungrier. The bank statements painted a picture I refused to accept. Digital transfers to accounts I had never seen. Mobile payments to services I had never used. My money was disappearing through my phone, like water through a cracked glass, and I felt powerless to stop the bleeding. Derek glanced up from his screen, catching me staring at my phone with what must have been pure panic written across my face. His expression shifted into that practiced look of concern he had perfected over the years. "Everything okay, babe? You look stressed." The word babe felt like acid on my skin. How many times had he called me that while systematically robbing me blind? How many gentle kisses on my forehead had been calculated distractions while he bled my accounts dry? "Just work stuff," I lied, forcing a smile that felt like broken glass. "You know how it is." He nodded sympathetically and returned to his phone. The same phone that never seemed to leave his side anymore. The same phone he guarded more carefully than our marriage vows. That afternoon at work, I sat in my cubicle staring at another notification. This time it was a payment to something called Premium Services LLC for $230. I had never heard of Premium Services LLC. I had never authorized any payment to Premium Services LLC. Yet somehow, my phone had apparently made this transaction at 2:17 a.m. while I was sleeping next to my husband. My colleague Sarah noticed me gripping my phone like it might explode. She rolled her chair over to my desk, her coffee mug steaming between her hands. "Girl, you look like you've seen a ghost. What's wrong?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them. The mysterious charges, the sleepless nights, the growing certainty that someone was stealing from me through my own device. Sarah listened with the intensity of someone who understood that sometimes your life could crumble in the most unexpected ways. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied my face with the sharp focus she usually reserved for quarterly reports. "Maya, can I ask you something that might sound crazy?" I nodded, desperate for any insight that might make sense of this nightmare. "When's the last time your husband borrowed your phone?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Derek borrowed my phone constantly. When his battery died, when he couldn't find his charger, when he wanted to show me something and mine was closer. I had never thought twice about it because married couples shared phones all the time. Didn't they? "All the time," I whispered, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. "He uses it all the time." Sarah's expression told me everything I needed to know before she even spoke. "Maya, there are apps, invisible apps. Someone could install something on your phone that gives them access to your banking information, your passwords, everything. And you would never know it was there." The office walls seemed to close in around me. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry insects. My husband, my Derek, the man who held me when I cried, the man who brought me soup when I was sick, the man who had access to my phone every single day. That evening, Derek was working late again, another client dinner that would keep him out until after midnight. I sat on our couch with my phone in my hands, turning it over and over like it might reveal its secrets through careful examination. Sarah had given me the name of someone who could help, a tech specialist named Marcus, who had experience with these kinds of digital invasions. She had called him a phone detective, which would have made me laugh under different circumstances. Marcus agreed to meet me at a coffee shop downtown. He was younger than I expected, maybe late 20s, with the kind of intense focus that comes from spending your life unraveling digital mysteries. He took my phone with the reverence of a surgeon handling a scalpel. "This might take a few minutes," he said, connecting my device to a laptop that looked like it belonged in a spy movie. "If someone installed monitoring software, I'll find it." I watched the code scroll across his screen like digital rain. Numbers and letters that might as well have been hieroglyphics to me, but to Marcus, they told a story. A story about my life being invaded, my privacy violated, my trust shattered. "There," he said, pointing to something on his screen. "You've got a remote access Trojan. Someone installed this about 7 weeks ago. It's been recording your keystrokes, capturing your banking passwords, and initiating transactions using your stored payment methods." 7 weeks ago, right around the time Derek had borrowed my phone to check the weather because his was updating, right around the time I had started noticing the strange charges. "Can you tell me who installed it?" Marcus shook his head. "The software is designed to hide its tracks, but I can tell you this: whoever did it had physical access to your phone for at least 10 minutes. This isn't something you can install remotely, someone had to have your device in their hands." Physical access. 10 minutes. My husband had physical access to my phone every single day. The coffee shop felt suddenly cold, like winter had crept through the windows and settled in my bones. The conversations around me faded into white noise. All I could hear was the sound of my own breathing and the mechanical clicking of Marcus's fingers on his keyboard. "Can you remove it?" "Absolutely. But Maya, if someone you trust did this to you, removing the software won't solve your real problem." His words followed me home like shadows. I sat in my car outside our house for 20 minutes, staring at the warm yellow glow from our living room windows. Inside was my husband, probably watching TV or reading, completely unaware that his wife had just discovered his betrayal. Or maybe he wasn't unaware. Maybe he was sitting in there wondering why the money had stopped flowing. Maybe he was already planning his next move. Derek was on the couch when I walked in, exactly as I had imagined. He looked up and smiled, the same smile that had made me fall in love with him 4 years ago. The same smile that now felt like a knife between my ribs. "How was your day, babe?" There it was again. That word that used to make me feel cherished and now made me feel hunted. "Fine," I managed, hanging my keys on their hook by the door. "Just the usual." I went through the motions of our evening routine: dinner together at the kitchen table, discussions about our days, our plans for the weekend, the weather. Normal married couple conversations that felt like elaborate theater performances now that I knew the truth. Derek's phone buzzed during dessert. He glanced at it and frowned. "Weird. My banking app says I have insufficient funds, but I know I made a deposit yesterday." The audacity was breathtaking. He was sitting there, eating the ice cream I had bought with money he hadn't stolen yet, complaining about his own financial problems while he systematically robbed me blind. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my spoon across the room and demand answers. Instead, I nodded sympathetically and suggested he call the bank in the morning. "These apps glitch sometimes," I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. That night, I lay in bed next to my husband, listening to him breathe. Each exhale felt like a confession. Each movement in his sleep felt like guilt. The man I had planned to grow old with was a stranger. Worse than a stranger, strangers don't usually have access to your bank accounts. I must have dozed because I woke up to the sound of Derek's phone buzzing on his nightstand. The room was dark, except for the blue glow of his screen. Through half-closed eyes, I watched him check a notification, type something quickly, and set the phone back down. At 3:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with another bank alert, a transfer of $400 to an account I didn't recognize. Derek rolled over and put his arm around me, pulling me close in his sleep. His wedding ring pressed against my shoulder. The same ring that sat on the same hand that had just stolen from me while I lay unconscious beside him. I spent the next 3 days in a strange kind of purgatory, going through the motions of my normal life while burning with rage and betrayal on the inside. Derek seemed completely normal, affectionate, attentive. He brought me flowers on Tuesday, my favorite white lilies, and told me he loved me while arranging them in a vase. The flowers felt like funeral arrangements for our marriage. Meanwhile, Marcus had given me detailed instructions. Don't let on that I knew about the software. Don't change my banking passwords yet. Don't confront Derek. Instead, document everything. Build a case. One wrong move and Derek could destroy the evidence, drain my accounts completely, and disappear. Patience, Marcus had told me. Right now you have the advantage because he doesn't know that you know. Use it. I started taking screenshots of every fraudulent transaction, every withdrawal, every mysterious payment. My phone became a crime scene that I carried in my pocket, collecting evidence of my husband's betrayal, one notification at a time. On Friday morning, Derek mentioned that he was taking a long weekend to visit his brother in Denver. He would leave that afternoon and return Monday evening. You don't mind if I go, do you, babe? I know it's short notice. I minded everything about Derek at this point, but I told him to have a good trip and helped him pack his suitcase. I even made him sandwiches for the road, slicing the turkey with the same kitchen knife I fantasized about using to cut up his credit cards. The moment his car disappeared around the corner, I called Marcus. He's gone for the weekend. What do I do now? Now we set a trap. Marcus arrived at my house an hour later with his laptop and a coffee shop's worth of energy drinks. He had been planning this moment since our first meeting, and his excitement was almost contagious. First, we're going to create a decoy bank account, he explained, spreading his equipment across my kitchen table. Then we're going to make it look like you just received a large inheritance. Finally, we're going to wait for him to take the bait. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Marcus would help me create fake bank statements showing a fictional inheritance of $50,000. Then we would place these documents where Derek would easily find them when he returned home. His greed would compel him to access this new account, but when he tried to steal from it, we would be ready. The beautiful thing about criminals, Marcus said while coding our trap, is that they always think they're smarter than everyone else. Your husband has gotten away with this for weeks. He's feeling confident, overconfident. That's when they make mistakes. Saturday and Sunday passed in a blur of planning and preparation. We created false documents that looked authentic enough to fool a greedy husband. We set up monitoring software that would track every attempt to access the fake account. We even rehearsed my performance for when Derek returned home. I needed to act like a woman who had just inherited $50,000 but was trying not to appear too excited about it. Pleased but measured. Happy but not suspicious. The interesting thing about planning someone's downfall is how it focuses the mind. For 3 days, I felt more clear-headed than I had in weeks. I wasn't a victim anymore, I was a hunter. Derek returned home Monday evening with a duffel bag full of laundry and stories about his weekend with his brother. He seemed relaxed, refreshed, completely unaware that he was walking into a carefully constructed snare. I had left the fake inheritance documents on my desk in our home office, positioned so they would catch his eye but look like I had tried to keep them private. The bait was set. That night, Derek was more affectionate than he had been in months. He cooked dinner, opened a bottle of wine, and told me how much he had missed me. Under different circumstances, it might have been romantic. Instead, it felt like watching a performance by an actor who was beginning to forget his lines. At 11:30 p.m., Derek announced that he was tired and going to bed. I told him I wanted to finish watching my show and would join him in a few minutes. He kissed my forehead and disappeared upstairs. I waited 20 minutes, then crept toward our home office. The door was closed, but I could see light underneath, the soft blue glow of a computer screen. Marcus had predicted this moment with almost supernatural accuracy. Derek couldn't resist the temptation of easy money, especially money that belonged to his wife. Through the crack under the door, I could see his shadow moving back and forth as he examined the fake documents. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. He's in, attempting to access the fake account now. I held my breath, listening to the sound of my husband typing on our computer. Every keystroke was another nail in the coffin of our marriage. Every click was another step toward his destruction. 20 minutes later, Derek emerged from the office looking satisfied. He found me in the living room, still pretending to watch television. Coming to bed? I nodded and followed him upstairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. We went through our usual bedtime routine, brushing teeth, changing clothes, small talk about tomorrow's weather. Derek fell asleep quickly, the sleep of a man who thought he was cleverly planning his next theft. I lay beside him staring at the ceiling, counting down the hours until morning. At 7 a.m., my phone rang. It was Marcus, and I could hear the excitement in his voice even before he spoke. We got him. He spent 3 hours trying to break into that fake account, tried 17 different password combinations, even attempted to reset the security questions using your personal information. Maya, we have everything we need. I walked into the bathroom and closed the door before responding. What happens now? Now, you decide how you want to handle this. You could confront him directly with the evidence. You could involve the police, since this is technically identity theft and fraud. Or, you could play a longer game and let him think he's winning while you protect yourself. The choice felt enormous. Confronting Derek meant acknowledging that my marriage was over. Involving police meant turning my private betrayal into a public spectacle. But playing a longer game meant living with a thief who thought he was outsmarting me. I chose option 4. Derek was making coffee when I came downstairs, humming softly to himself. He seemed unusually cheerful for a Tuesday morning. Probably because he thought he would soon have access to $50,000 that belonged to his wife. Good morning, beautiful. The endearment hit me like a slap. I managed to smile and accept the coffee mug he handed me. It was my favorite mug, the one he had given me for our first anniversary. The irony was almost poetic. Derek, can I ask you something? Of course. I took a deep breath and looked directly into his eyes. The same brown eyes I had fallen in love with. The same eyes that had looked at me with what I thought was honesty for 3 years. If someone was stealing from me, if someone was using my phone to steal my money, what do you think I should do about it? For just a moment, less than a second, Derek's expression flickered, a tiny crack in his performance that revealed the guilt underneath. Then his face rearranged itself into a mask of concern. That's terrible, Maya. Have you been having problems with your accounts? The performance was flawless. The right amount of surprise, concern, and support. If I hadn't known better, I would have believed him completely. I think someone has been accessing my banking information through my phone, I continued, watching his face carefully, making transactions I never authorized. Jesus, that's scary. Have you called the bank? Changed your passwords? I've done all of that, but it keeps happening. Derek set down his coffee mug and moved closer to me, placing his hands on my shoulders with a gentle touch of a concerned husband. Babe, that sounds like malware or spyware on your phone. Someone might have installed something when you weren't looking. You should take it to a tech specialist. The audacity was breathtaking. He was standing there, touching me with the same hands he used to steal from me, suggesting that I do exactly what I had already done. Suggesting that I discover exactly what I had already discovered. That's a good idea, I said. I should definitely do that. I spent that day at work researching divorce attorneys and financial recovery options. Sarah helped me photocopy every piece of evidence Marcus and I had collected: bank statements, screenshots, digital forensic reports, everything that proved my husband was a thief. By 5 p.m., I had an appointment with a lawyer for the following week and a clear plan for protecting my remaining assets. That evening, I moved money from our joint accounts into a new account Derek didn't know about. Not stealing, just protecting what was left of my financial life from further pillaging. Derek seemed agitated during dinner. He kept checking his phone and frowning at the screen, probably wondering why his latest attempt to access my fake inheritance account had failed. Everything okay? I asked, using the same tone of fake concern he had perfected. Just work stuff, you know how it is. The callback to our conversation from the previous week felt like cosmic justice. Around 9 p.m., Derek announced that he needed to run to the store for milk. We had a full gallon of milk in the refrigerator. He was clearly going somewhere to make phone calls or send emails about his failed hacking attempts. I told him to drive safely and settled in to wait for his return. Derek came home an hour later empty-handed, claiming the store had been closed for inventory. Another lie in a marriage that had apparently been built on lies. That night, as I lay in bed listening to my husband breathe, I made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. Tomorrow, I would end this charade. Tomorrow, I would confront Derek with everything I knew and watch our marriage crumble in real time. But first, I would give him one final opportunity to steal from me. One last chance to prove that his greed was stronger than any love he might feel for his wife. Wednesday morning arrived with thunderstorms that rattled our windows and filled the house with gray light. Derek seemed distracted during breakfast, checking his phone constantly and barely touching his coffee. I had placed another fake document on my desk the night before. This one indicated that my fictional inheritance had been deposited and was available for transfer. The ultimate test of my husband's character. At 10 a.m., I texted Derek that I was running errands and would be back in a few hours. Then I drove to Marcus's apartment and watched the surveillance feeds from my own home. Derek waited exactly 17 minutes after receiving my text before going into the office. Marcus and I sat in front of his computer screens like we were watching a movie, except the movie was my life falling apart in real time. "There he is," Marcus said, pointing to the screen showing our home office. "And there he goes, trying to access the account again." We watched Derek type frantically for 20 minutes. He tried password combinations based on my birthday, our anniversary, my mother's maiden name. He attempted to reset security questions using information only a spouse would know. The desperate hunger in his movements was heartbreaking and infuriating at the same time. This was the man I had trusted with my heart, my body, my financial security. And he was sitting in our home office trying to figure out how to steal $50,000 from his wife. When he finally gave up and left the office, I drove home with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The evidence was overwhelming. The betrayal was complete. The marriage was over. Derek was in our living room when I walked through the front door, reading a magazine with the casual air of someone who hadn't just spent 30 minutes attempting grand theft. "How were your errands?" "Productive," I said, sitting down across from him. "Derek, we need to talk." Something in my tone must have alerted him because his expression shifted immediately. The magazine slipped from his hands onto the floor. "What's wrong?" I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app, showing him the screen filled with unauthorized transactions, weeks of theft documented in devastating detail. "Someone has been stealing from me through this phone for almost 2 months. Thousands of dollars. Gone." Derek leaned forward, studying the screen with an expression of shock that would have won awards if acting paid better than identity theft. "My God, Maya, this is terrible. How did this happen?" "That's what I've been trying to figure out." So I took my phone to a specialist. The color drained from Derek's face so quickly, I thought he might faint. His wedding ring caught the light as his hand trembled slightly. "A specialist?" "A digital forensics expert. He found malware on my phone, software that someone installed to steal my banking information." Derek's mouth opened and closed without sound. The performance was over. The curtain had fallen. There was nowhere left to hide. "The interesting thing about this software," I continued, "is that it can only be installed with physical access to the device. Someone had to have my phone in their hands for at least 10 minutes. Maya, I'm not finished." The words came out harder than I intended, sharp enough to cut through whatever excuse he was preparing. The specialist also helped me set up monitoring software, so when someone tried to access a fake bank account I created, we recorded everything, every keystroke, every password attempt, every desperate effort to steal money that doesn't exist. Derek's face had gone completely white. He looked like a man who had just realized he was standing in quicksand. "Maya, please, let me explain." "Explain what, Derek?" "Explain how you've been systematically robbing your wife for 2 months. Explain how you installed spyware on my phone. Explain how you've been lying to my face while bleeding my savings account dry." The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, the thunderstorm was reaching its peak, lightning illuminating our living room in stark flashes. Inside, my marriage was dying in slow motion. Derek buried his face in his hands, and when he looked up, there were tears in his eyes. Real tears, not the performed emotion he had been showing me for weeks. I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? I was in trouble, gambling debts. I owed some people who don't accept payment plans. The confession tumbled out of him like water from a broken dam. Poker games that had started as harmless fun with coworkers. Online betting that had escalated beyond his control. Debts to people who had made it clear that failure to pay would result in broken bones. I thought I could borrow some money from your account and pay it back before you noticed. Just a few $100s. But the interest kept growing and they kept demanding more. So you decided to steal from me. I didn't think of it as stealing. We're married, I thought of it as borrowing from our future. The rationalization was breathtaking. In Derek's mind, systematically robbing his wife wasn't theft, it was financial planning. Our future? Derek, you were stealing my future. He started crying harder then, ugly sobs that shook his shoulders. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the sympathy that had drawn me to him in the first place. Then I remembered watching him type passwords on our computer, trying to steal $50,000 that he thought I had inherited. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Maya. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can get counseling. I can get help for the gambling. We can work through this. The word we felt like glass in my ears. There was no we anymore. We didn't survive one person systematically betraying the other. Derek, I've already filed for divorce. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. Derek's crying stopped abruptly, replaced by a look of shock so complete that it was almost comical. What? I filed yesterday. The papers will be served tomorrow. I've also reported the fraud to the police and to the bank. Maya, please, please don't do this. I love you. I made a mistake, but I love you. Love. The word felt meaningless now. Love didn't install spyware. Love didn't steal. Love didn't lie awake at night planning ways to defraud the person sleeping beside you. If you loved me, Derek, you never would have touched my phone. That night, Derek slept on the couch. I lay in our bed, which already felt too big without him, listening to the storm fade into distant thunder. The house felt different. Lighter, somehow, like a weight had been lifted that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. How did it go? It's over, I typed back. Thank you for everything. You did the hard part. You trusted yourself enough to find the truth. Trusting myself. For weeks, I had known something was wrong but had doubted my own instincts. I had made excuses for strange charges, rationalized unusual behavior, ignored the voice in my head that kept whispering that something wasn't right. Never again. The divorce proceedings moved quickly once Derek realized he had no leverage. My evidence was overwhelming, his guilt was undeniable, and his lawyer advised him to settle rather than face criminal charges for identity theft and fraud. I got the house, I got my money back, plus interest. I got my freedom. Derek moved in with his brother in Denver, presumably the same brother he had visited during our weekend of setting traps. I wondered if the brother knew he was harboring a thief, or if Derek had managed to reinvent himself there too. 6 months later, I was sitting in my kitchen drinking morning coffee when my phone buzzed with a banking notification. For a split second, my heart rate spiked, that old panic response kicking in. Then I remembered. These were my accounts now, my phone, my passwords, my financial security. The notification was just my paycheck being deposited. Sarah stopped by that weekend to help me paint the living room. We had chosen a warm yellow that made the whole space feel brighter, more hopeful. Any regrets? She asked while we were taking a coffee break. I considered the question seriously. Did I regret the end of my marriage? The discovery that someone I loved was capable of sustained betrayal? The months of feeling paranoid and violated? I regret trusting someone who didn't deserve it, I said finally. But I don't regret finding out who he really was. And now? Now, I looked around my living room, painted in colors I had chosen without having to consult anyone. I thought about my bank account, growing steadily without any mysterious hemorrhaging. I considered my phone, which buzzed only with notifications I expected. Now I trust myself. Marcus had been right about criminals always thinking they're smarter than everyone else. Derek had gotten greedy, gotten careless, and made the fatal mistake of underestimating his victim. He forgot that the woman he was stealing from was smart enough to notice patterns, brave enough to investigate, and strong enough to fight back. He forgot that stealing from someone requires you to know them well enough to access their vulnerabilities. But knowing someone that well also means they know you. And when they finally see you clearly, all your clever plans crumble like houses made of cards. Derek had thought he was the hunter. He had thought I was easy prey. He forgot that sometimes prey learns to bite back. And when it does, the predator discovers that the trap was never about the money. It was about revealing who people really are when they think no one is watching.